The locals wouldn't come near it. The agent met me at the gate, handed me the keys without looking me in the eye, and muttered, "You won't find what you're looking for in there, just what's been left behind." He got back in his car and drove off without another word. I should have taken that as a sign. Instead, I stepped through the gate, boots crunching over broken glass and gravel, briefcase in hand. Inside, the air changed. It was heavy, stagnant. The entry hall was littered with overturned wheelchairs, rusted gurneys, and scraps of clothing that looked too fresh to be from the 1970s. My flashlight flickered, though I checked the batteries twice. As I moved deeper, the building groaned around me. Not from age, more like something shifting beneath the floorboards. Room after room, hallway after hallway, I saw remnants of chaos, scratched walls, bloodstains too dark and too old to explain. Patient records left open with half-finished sentences like, "Patient refuses to sleep, says the faces crawl on the ceiling." My stomach turned, but I pressed on. Then I found the door. Room 302. It was the only one that wasn't rotted or rusted, perfectly intact. The brass plaque on it gleamed as if it had been polished yesterday. I reached out to touch the knob, and someone knocked from the other side. 3 knocks, loud, measured, waiting. I stood frozen, hand inches from the metal, heart thundering in my chest. Then a voice whispered from behind the door, "You're late." I yanked my hand back like I'd touched fire. The hallway was dead quiet again, but my ears were ringing. I stepped back, eyes fixed on the door. No one was supposed to be here. The hospital had been sealed off for years, condemned and forgotten. I considered leaving right then, walking out, calling it a day and telling the firm to send someone else. But I didn't, because the knob on room 302 started turning. Slow, controlled. It clicked, then stopped. But the door didn't open. I leaned in, every nerve screaming. My flashlight beam quivered across the wood. It looked wrong, too clean, like it didn't belong to this place, like it had been waiting. My curiosity got the better of me. I reached for the handle again. It was warm. I turned it slowly, pushing the door inward with the edge of my boot. The air inside smelled like copper and mildew. My light swept across the room. An old hospital bed sat in the center. Straps hung loose from the sides. Chains dangled from the ceiling, and painted across the far wall in what I hoped was dried paint were the words, "The walls remember." I stepped inside, and the door slammed shut behind me. I spun, heart leaping to my throat. The knob wouldn't budge. The hinges had vanished. I was trapped. And then the temperature dropped like something had sucked all the heat from the air. I turned back toward the bed. Someone was sitting in it, not lying down, sitting. Their head was wrapped in gauze, blood soaked around the eyes and mouth. Their arms were strapped, but the restraints looked chewed through, not cut. The figure tilted its head slightly toward me and whispered in a voice that sounded like dry leaves scraping across wood, "Tell me what you see behind your eyes." I didn't answer, because the room began to bleed. Red seeped from the ceiling like rain. The floor pulsed beneath my feet, soft and spongy like flesh. The figure in the bed laughed, a deep animal sound, and then lurched forward. I stumbled backward and hit the wall. Except it wasn't a wall anymore. It was breathing. I staggered away from it, hands sinking into the soft, warm surface like wet clay. The wall pulsed beneath my palms in a slow rhythm, as though it had a heartbeat. I tried to pull away, but it clung to me, sticky and alive. My flashlight hit the floor, casting frantic shadows across the room, each one dancing like it had a mind of its own. Behind me, the figure in the bed began thrashing, chains rattling above its head as it laughed louder. High-pitched now, almost joyful. The gauze was slipping, and I saw glimpses of what was beneath. Skin fused shut where the eyes should have been, a mouth stretched too wide, teeth like glass shards. But worse than the face was the thing it said next. Room 302 remembers everyone, even the ones who lied to themselves. I tore free from the wall, pieces of it peeling off and sticking to my coat like rotted meat. The door was gone. No frame, no knob, just smooth wall behind me. I turned in circles, chest heaving, searching for any way out. That's when the lights flickered, briefly, just enough to show what had been hidden in the corners. There were others, dozens of them, figures hanging upside down from the ceiling. Limbs bound in old leather restraints, faces missing or stitched shut. Their skin gray and waxy. They twitched as the light passed over them, as if awakening from some long slumber. The laughter stopped. Now the only sound was a whisper, circling the room like wind through a dead forest. She brought them here. I froze. I didn't know who they meant. Not yet. Then something new appeared. A door. Not the original one. This one was smaller, crooked, carved into the far wall like an afterthought. It opened slowly, revealing a hallway so narrow I'd have to turn sideways to fit. But I didn't hesitate. Anything to get out of that room. As I stepped through, I heard one final thing from the figure in the bed, its voice now nothing more than a rasp of breath. She's still here, waiting, feeding, and now you've brought her something new. The hallway slammed shut behind me, and the lights went out. I was plunged into complete darkness, the kind of darkness that presses in close, smothering your breath, convincing you there's something an inch from your face just waiting to touch you. My hands groped the narrow hallway walls, slick and uneven like water-damaged flesh. I shuffled forward, sideways, barely able to move. Then something brushed past my ankle. I froze. It was small, fast, cold. I held my breath and waited, but whatever it was didn't come back. Instead, I began to hear it. Not scuttling, not scratching. Whispers, faint, dozens of them, names, repeating, again and again and again. At first, they meant nothing. Then I recognized one. A woman's name I hadn't heard in years. Clara. She was my father's first nurse. She'd gone missing when I was a boy, back when he worked at this very hospital. I only remembered her because my father cried at her funeral, even though they never found her body. And now, her name was echoing from behind the wall, like she was still walking just out of reach. I pressed my ear to the side of the corridor. I heard crying, soft, broken, and real. Then a voice, close and clear. She told me you'd come back. She always said your blood would bring you here. My blood. The walls on either side of me lurched, forcing me forward. The hallway opened suddenly into a circular chamber lined with shattered mirrors. I stepped inside, disoriented, surrounded by hundreds of broken reflections of myself, each one slightly wrong. Eyes too black, limbs bending in ways they shouldn't, grinning when I wasn't. In the center of the room was an old hospital file. It was open and stamped across the top in faded red ink. Patient 302, transferred to long-term holding, unsafe for general population. I turned the page. There was a photo, blurry, distorted. It was a woman in a nurse's uniform, and standing behind her was my father, smiling. Just before the lights exploded and every reflection began screaming at once. The sound was unbearable. All around me, the broken mirrors howled with my own face, twisting, shattering, screaming with mouths that opened too wide. I dropped to my knees, hands over my ears, but the screams weren't just sound. They were inside me, drilling into my skull like needles. Each one hissed a word I didn't want to understand. She's yours. Then silence. Instant. Absolute. I opened my eyes. The chamber was empty. The mirrors were gone. The hospital file had vanished. In its place on the cold floor was a single scrap of paper, a torn patient bracelet, stained and faded. Name, unknown. Diagnosis, violent hallucinations, repeating name, Dorian. Relation to Dr. Vale, unconfirmed. My name is Dorian Vale. My legs buckled. I sat against the wall, mind reeling. My father had worked here during its final years. He never spoke of it, just said some patients couldn't be helped. And when I asked about Clara, he would change the subject. Now I knew why. She didn't disappear. She was buried alive in this place. And something followed. The wall beside me let out a low groan, then cracked open like a mouth. A small gap widened, revealing a tunnel behind it. Red light poured out, and that smell returned, rot, copper, decay, the kind of scent you don't forget. I didn't want to crawl through, but the hallway behind me was gone. I moved forward on all fours, the tunnel pressing close around my shoulders, brushing against my neck like breathing skin. As I crawled, I began to hear humming, a soft, familiar tune, a lullaby my father used to whistle when he thought I was asleep. Then, without warning, something grabbed my ankle. I kicked back, scraping my boots against bone. I turned and saw her, Clara, or what was left of her. She stared up from the tunnel floor, half her face bone, the other half stretched skin, eyes glowing dim and gray. She didn't speak. She just held up one shaking, rotted finger and pointed behind me. I turned and saw the real patient 302. She stood at the end of the tunnel, tall, impossibly thin, a veil hanging over her face. Her arms were too long, her fingers twitching at her sides. She whispered a word through the veil that made my spine lock in place. Father. I wasn't the buyer. I was the inheritance. I couldn't move. Her voice, if it was a voice, froze every muscle in my body. It wasn't like hearing something external. It was like being filled with a word that didn't belong inside me. My throat clenched, my vision swam, my heart slammed against my ribs as if trying to run for me. She stepped forward. Her veil fluttered though there was no breeze, and beneath it I caught a glimpse. Skin split down the middle of her face, stitched back together crudely with what looked like surgical thread and hair. Her mouth wasn't in the right place. It stretched from cheek to ear, teeth like splinters all filed to points. Clara was gone. Nothing but wet smears on the tunnel floor. I crawled backward, scraping my palms raw against the stone until I burst out into another room, a hidden ward buried beneath the asylum. It reeked of antiseptic and death. Old equipment sat in rusted heaps. Operating tables lined the walls, stained dark. On the far end was a desk, and on that desk a single tape recorder. It clicked on by itself. My father's voice crackled through the speaker. Patient 302 remains unresponsive to therapy. Severe trauma. Fixated on my presence. Claims to be my blood. This is impossible. There is no record of her birth, no connection to me that I can prove. Yet she knows things about my son. Things no one else should know. I've requested isolation for her. And sedation. The tape hissed violently and cut off. Then, from the far side of the room, a light flickered on above an operating table, and someone sat up on it. It was her, patient 302, but this time without the veil. Her face was a mutilated imitation of someone I had only seen in photographs, a woman with my eyes, my cheekbones, my father's mouth. Her skin hung from her bones like wet paper. She smiled at me, lips cracking open to reveal rows of jagged baby teeth. I was the first, she whispered. You were the last. I backed away, bumping into a metal cabinet. A drawer slid open by itself. Inside were dozens of birth certificates, all with the name Vale, all stamped deceased. Some were infants, others adults. I saw my own name and the date. Today. Then the room erupted with a siren so loud I screamed. Lights burst. The floor cracked beneath me. From the fissure, skeletal arms began reaching out, clawing at the floor, the walls, the air grabbing for me. The siren stopped, and everything went black, except her face. smiling, waiting. When the blackness faded, I was standing, not crawling, not running, standing upright in the middle of a patient ward I hadn't entered before. The walls were lined with rotted beds, and every mattress had a dent in it, as if someone had just been lying there. But the room was empty, except it wasn't, because all around me I could feel them watching. I tried to move, but my limbs felt distant, like I was piloting a body from somewhere deep inside it. Cold sweat soaked through my shirt. My ears rang. My vision stuttered. And then across the floor I saw a trail. Blood. Thick, blackened, still warm. I followed it, stepping carefully between debris and broken restraints until I reached a wide metal door marked Ward C, Restricted Access. It stood slightly open. Behind it, I heard breathing. Not one person, dozens. I pushed it open. Inside, the walls were lined with chairs, and in each chair sat a patient. All silent, all staring forward. Their eyes had been removed cleanly. Stitched sockets. Some smiled, others sobbed. But every one of them had the same stitched V carved into their foreheads. Val, my name. Then, from behind the crowd, she stepped forward. Patient 302. Not veiled now, not shifting or snarling or broken. She looked calm, peaceful, more alive than before. And behind her, strapped to a chair, gagged and trembling, was my father. Old, emaciated, eyes wide with terror. She turned to me and said, in a voice that didn't belong in this world, "He made us, then he buried us. You were his way out, but now, you'll be our witness." I tried to run. I turned and bolted back toward the door, but it wasn't there anymore. Just a mirror. And in the reflection, I saw myself, not as I was, but strapped to a chair just like them, mouth sewn shut, eyes gone, watching, forever. The light above me flickered, and I began to scream, but no sound came out. I couldn't scream. Not at first. Not until I realized I was screaming, but only inside my own head. My reflection stayed silent, trapped, a stitched mockery of who I had once been. My body felt cold, weighted like something was pulling me under. And then, something changed. The mirror cracked. A thin fracture starting from the top corner, snaking down across my reflection's face. Then another, and another, until the whole surface webbed with thin silver lines. Behind me, I felt heat, real burning heat. A presence. A hand touched my shoulder. I spun around. It was Clara, whole, young, eyes clear, face peaceful. Not the rotting corpse from before. She looked as she must have before it all fell apart, before the asylum consumed her. She placed something in my hand. A key. The metal was warm, glowing faintly with golden light. I stared at her, stunned. "Not all things that are buried are meant to stay hidden," she said. "Your father made his choice. Now you make yours." I turned back to the mirror. The stitched version of me was gone. And behind the glass I saw a door, simple wooden, marked with a single word, "Exit." I jammed the key into the cracked surface. The mirror shattered, exploding outward in a storm of glittering glass. The patients vanished like smoke. The walls brightened, no longer soaked with decay but covered in white tile, clean, silent. The screaming stopped. Patient 302 was still there, but her face had changed. She looked tired, worn, sad. She stood beside my father's slumped body, eyes meeting mine for the first time with something that resembled peace. "You were never supposed to pay for what he did," she whispered. "None of us were." The building began to quake, not with malice, but release, like something old was finally letting go. The light grew brighter, flooding every room, peeling away decades of pain, rot, and horror. I stepped through the door. Just once I looked back. Clara smiled, and patient 302, who had no name, nodded, just once. I walked out into daylight. The asylum was gone. Where it once stood, nothing remained but wild flowers and stone. I returned to the city, terminated the deal, and donated the land as a memorial for the forgotten. No more walls, no more chains, no more screaming. I still hear them in my dreams sometimes, but now they're singing.